Doctor, and all distinguished people here and the listeners, first of all, let me start with a small prayer. It will take 1 minute. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvina Vaditamasthuma Vidvishavahe Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So, the prayer itself kind of spells out what we need to do. The mantra, ancient mantra. Sahana Vavatu, may we be protected, you and I. Sahanau Bhunaktu, may we be nourished. Sahaviryam Karavavahai, may our virility and virya increase, our strength increase. Tejasvina Vaditamastu, may the tejas in our minds glow. Ma Vidvishavahai, let's not fight with each other. I mean, this is beautifully said in the Vedas. To start with most satsangs, we usually chant it. Sometimes we fail to understand what is being said. I mean, we don't listen to what it is. We just chant it. So this is the fact. Now, I'm so glad to see that you're all representing AyurVaid Hospitals. Because as I have said several times, you know it, but I'm just repeating because the public is going to also listen to this, that Ayurveda is not simply a science of prescriptions and medicines as some other disciplines of medicine are. You know what Ayurveda is. It is Ayu, life, Veda, study of life. However, what I'm trying to say is Ayurveda is not picking up tablets from the shelf or nowadays of course some Ayurvedic medicines are available in gulika form, that's all right, but that's not all unless one follows the dinachara, which means how to do your daily life. The medicines are half effective, they don't really, they need not work fully. It's very well known to the Ayurvedic physicians and Ayurvedic scholars that Ayurveda is a science of life, and without dinachara, you can't really call it Ayurveda. It's not as if we produce medicines in a factory and send it across. This is not. So, since it is Ayurveda, yoga also forms part of this. Yoga also is a science of life. It's basically, so my parampara is the Nath parampara, but in that my particular line is Kriya Yoga. So I have been trying to teach Kriya Yoga to many people have practiced Kriya Yoga. Before I go into the central question which Dr. Abhilash asked me, I would like to say that many of us who have been practicing Kriya need not be necessarily from me because there are other schools of Kriya. I have found that very little serious cases have happened. This is a dangerous virus. During the epidemic, it can affect anybody. I agree with you. We need to wear masks. We need to take precautions. Fine, all that is true. But having said that, I have found, and even cases where a couple of people who really got seriously affected by it, if you ask the doctors who treated them, some person was so serious that half the lungs was gone. They treated it Rishikesh AIIMS, and the doctor, when they discharged this person, I don't want to use the name, said, this is a miracle, we never thought that you're going to come out of here. And believe me, she was, with all that, with all her ICUs and everything, she kept some time for her Kriya as much as she could. Of course, she couldn't do the Mahamudra and Asana side of it, but the other things, pranayama. So, the way to breathe, how to oxygenate your bronchioles in the lungs, proper food, and of course cleanliness. You know, for 1,000 years, Jain monks have been wearing a mask. We are wearing it only during the pandemic, which means what? That it's a good idea to wear it. So when you wear a mask, don't get fed up and say, oh, what is this? I am always wearing a mask. The surgeon in the surgery wears the mask, right? And Of course, the bank robber also has a mask. That's a different story. So that nobody knows who he is. But the Jain monks have been wearing a mask for 1,000 years to prevent. Of course, they do it for ahimsa, but it also prevents spreading of disease. So when people come and say we are fed up, I said, listen, some people have been doing it as a religious practice. So please relax. It's okay. You'll take it off after a while. Even if you go to a chemical factory, you wear masks. So that's one way. So there is this fear that has come into people. This was Dr. Abhilash's question, central question. We are living at home, we can't go out, it's a lockdown. I always talk to people, I tell them, listen, there was a time, even now it's like that a few spiritual people at least deliberately and voluntarily imposed a lockdown upon themselves. You may call it solitude, you may call it ekant, dhyan, whatever you want to call it, but they imposed it. It was not because there was an epidemic around. Why did they impose it? Because in such circumstances, it's possible to do a lot of mind work when you're sitting locked in. You're not going out. Of course, your family should also be cooperative in this, otherwise it's a problem. But generally, so this time when you sit at home in solitude, because you cannot go out, it's not voluntary, but you can't go out. That is the time when you do things which will expand your mind, because Ayu is not only the body, it's also the mind. Firm body, healthy mind, movement towards the spiritual. These are the steps. So these two are important, at least the first steps. So follow the yama niyamas of yoga. Moderate food, nutritious food, sahana bhunaktu, may we be nourished. Follow that. Protect yourself from infections. Consider it as a scientific and a spiritual act, and stay in. And during this period, one day the lockdown is going to open. It's not going to be there forever. Meanwhile, you might have done a lot of things which you could not have done when there was no lockdown. See, I have been doing a lot of online talks, which I rarely do. I used to be worried and frightened of this online business, but I'm forced to do. Why? Because I can't go out and talk to people. Satsangs are conducted online, so many good things can be worked out. Music, listen to good music. If you are inclined to aradhana, do some pujas. But you don't get time, you run away to the office, you come back late at night, again there is a business meeting. So these are all good. Consider this as a cut-off point, a period of rest where you are recovering your body and your mind and moving forward, so that when the lockdown opens, you are getting into a new world with more creative inputs. This is the yogic way of looking at it. Of course, it's not easy when somebody in your own family dies, your own relative dies. The wound is very bad. It's not so easy to get rid of it. I'm not saying you should get rid of it. I'm only saying only time can heal that wound. Nothing else can heal that wound. However, people who are deeply into the understanding of the self, which is the study of yoga and Vedanta, know that the body is not the be all and end all of life, and there is some other element in us which can neither be killed nor wounded. When this happens, I tell you, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa passed away. Now in Bengal and in olden days in many other places, it is the custom for the wife to break the bangles and rub the sindoor off. 3 days later, Sharda Devi was about to do this, which was the usual practice. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa appeared in a dream and he said, are you crazy? I have just walked from this room and gone to the next room. What are you doing? You are not a widow. You see, I'm giving you an example to say that if you are deeply entrenched, if you deeply understand the ancient teachings of this country, maybe there in other countries, but I know this much, certainly the roots are here, then you know that yes, There is pain because you can't see the person, talk to them. The person is not gone anywhere. The real person, the inner being is still around. You may not be able to communicate, you may not be able to see, but it's there. It's part of, and we believe that they will come back at some point. That's a different story. You may not believe in it. Okay, fine. So these things, plus the fact that yoga is a practice. If you follow the yoga darsana and follow the yoga sutras of Patanjali, then yoga is defined as chitta, vritti, nirodha, which means this is the best time for us to fully involve ourselves in the practice of freeing the mind from all distractions, vrittis, so that when the mind is calm and quiet, so many things happen inside. It's the tarmac, the runway from which you can take off to higher levels of thought and higher levels of spiritual experience. So if someone can sit with people and talk about this and say, utilize your time while you are here for these things. Make use of the internet. Now, I am not against science. Science is wonderful. AyurVaid is a great science, of course. So, here is internet, which is a great, utilize it to spread this message so that the fear is not there. And the other thing is, many people, I am sure, succumb to this disease because of fear also. Because what happens, the moment you have fear, your immunity system becomes weak. This is known to you. The doctors, you know it. In Ayurveda, we know it. When the body is weak, when there is fear, the immune system goes for a toss. So what is the best immunity booster? One, of course, is proper pranayam. Second, some of the rejuvenating herbs which are available in Ayurveda. Two, to understand that really, truly, nobody dies. And patience builds immunity. So, if this much is there, then I think most people will be able to handle this. Again, I must repeat that the wound of losing someone near and dear, only time can heal, no question about that. But we can also ask for help from the higher realms to get some kind of peace of mind in ourselves. I think I will stop now. You might have another question, Doctor.
When we talk about disease, so there is always two components. That is, one is the pain that is coming due to the disease, and
Yes.
there is an ongoing sufferings due to that.
Right.
So how will you, in your viewpoint, that what could be the transformational changes that should be there, especially in this pandemic, in the human consciousness, that it would help in overcoming this pandemic and as well as the future pandemics? What
Right.
transformational changes the human consciousness should have?
I think one should, it's not easy, one should stop thinking only about oneself and think about the hundreds of people who are suffering. This can, and therefore contribute to what we can do to help them free themselves of their suffering. Then your suffering hardly is there, it doesn't remain anywhere. You see, we are part of this whole world. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu is the Vedic dictum. So when we think of sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, when the entire world should be happy and not suffer, ma kaschit dukhavat bhavet, let not anyone suffer. When this comes in deep in my mind, my suffering becomes marginal. Then I want to help others who are suffering. This is exactly what Swami Vivekananda said when he said, Atmano mokshartha jagad hitaya. He, sarva bhuta hite ratha is a quality of a yogi. According to Sri Krishna advising Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita chapter 12, Bhakti Yoga, when Arjuna asks Krishna, who do you think is the greatest of yogis? One who worships you as formless or one who worships you with form? Who do you think is? He says it doesn't matter. Modus operandi is not important. What is important are qualities, attributes, gunas. And what are the gunas? Of course, there are two others which we can refer to in passing, but the third one I am talking about. And that is, one is Samniyam Indraya Gramam, one who has the control of his senses. Now this is not so easy, so let's skip it. It's possible, but it's not so easy. And especially in a lockdown, we need to practice it by force. We can't let all our senses become active because we can't satisfy them. Okay. The next one, Sarvatra Samabuddhaya. In all circumstances, to keep the mind sama. Now this can only come through long practice and to the understanding that once somebody is born, he is sure to die. Anything that is created is sure to go. So let's not panic. Let's do the best we can as long as we live. Then the third one, this is what I was talking about, Sarva Bhuta Hite Rata, one whose mind there is concern for every living being. So this is why I advocate vegetarianism, because you can live without causing injury and pain to other living beings. You can if you want to. So now when you come to human beings, when you say living beings, please don't exclude human beings from that. Say that I am a pure vegetarian, I don't mind bumping of human beings. Now that is not why ahimsa. So therefore, when you think of others, then you try to serve them. When you try to serve them, consider them as divinity in human form. Swami Vivekananda used to say they are Narayanas, Daridra Narayanas. They have Daridra for the time being, but they are Narayanas. Serve them. So what is the puja you can do? If you have a deity, you do Pada Sevanam. When you have a human being who is a deity, because from our point of view, every human being is a walking, moving, talking temple of the divine. A spark of the divine is in every human being. It may not have expanded fully, but it is there. Whether he knows it or not, we know that it is there. So therefore, the only worship we can do is not arati to the human being, but service to the human being. This is Pada Sevanam as far as a human being is concerned. So we are actually worshipping when you do this seva. When these concepts are a little bit understood by the mind, then our suffering is not so important, others' sufferings are important, and we try to help them in whichever. It could be medical, it could be scientific, it could be mind, like trying to help them keep calm, meditate, and so on and so forth. Before I wind up the answer to this question, you must know the ancient story of the Buddha and how a lady who had only son, when the son died, she went to the Buddha, laid him there and said, please bring him back to life because you are the Buddha, the enlightened one. The Buddha said, please go and look for one house where nobody has died and bring me a mustard seed from there, and then I will do what is required. She looked. There was not a single house where somebody had not died at some point. He came back and said, I couldn't find the mustard seed because of this. He said, then this is normal. Your son has died. In this time when your son died, thousands of sons have died in this universe. When you consider that your pain is not there, you want to serve others. So this attitude, having said this, I must say that if my son dies, it's not so easy to quickly. I'm a married man myself, I'm a grahastha, I'm not a sannyasi. It's not so easy to heal the wound, even in my state, I'm telling you. It will take time. With all my understanding, it will take time. So hold people's hands when they suffer. Actually, now of course, because of the pandemic, you're not allowed to hold hands, but at least sit with people, talk to them, put them at ease. Try to get rid of the suffering which has happened to them because of ill health. And teach them how to prevent it. At least we can prevent this from happening. If how to improve your immunity, how to be able to teach them all the immunity boosters, right from the herbal immunity, like in Ayurveda we have many rejuvenators, for instance Amalka Lehya, which is Chavanprash of course, without the brand, and so many immune producing immunity boosters that we have chemically, I mean as herbs and medicines, plus yoga, meditation, breathing and mind counseling. Plus somehow try to convince people that the real you doesn't go anywhere, it's still alive, very much. I mean from my point of view, this is all I can do. When the people are hungry, feed them. And what happens? You forget your own hunger actually. You should go out and see in some places people don't have food. They're suffering because there is no food. I can't go and talk Vedanta to them. So what can we do? Give food. Somebody asked Swami Vivekananda, shall we go into the villages and teach Vedanta? He said, first give them food. You can't teach Vedanta on an empty stomach. So this is where your discipline, Ayurveda, comes into play, because it's body, mind and soul, I think. It's not just the body. It's not like you have a disease, you take a medicine and... So these are some of the things which more than me maybe you can do to people.
So, given that, like you very well put up um, uh, a small statement regarding the mind and the mind counseling, like even in the darshanas, we have the understanding of the life that it becomes it begins with the union of the Purusha with the Ashta Prakritis and the Shodasha Vikaras.
According to Sankhya, yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So those kind of understandings, the understanding of the manas in the Indian context, and the mind which is revolving in the psychology or the psychiatric world. So there is a very little understanding between the context of the manas and the mind. So, could you please elaborate a bit over this?
Sir, I'm not so familiar with the Sankhya Darshana, but a little bit we know, because it comes from there. One wonderful thing about Sankhya is that Kapila Muni is supposed to be the author of Sankhya system of thought, and he's so important that Vyasa has to get Krishna to say in the Gita, among the Munis I am Kapila. You see how important it is. So, and as you said, Sankhya is not so much of a there is no Prajapati concept in Sankhya. There is no creator God out there. There is Ishvara, of course, but that Ishvara is something else. It's primordial wisdom, primordial supreme being, not something who makes human beings and throws them onto the earth, and then when they don't behave, beats them and throws them into... This kind of Ishvara is not there in Sankhya. This is a very funny Ishvara. Anyway, so this Ishvara is an all-pervading supreme wisdom, primordial wisdom, which Purusha combines with the Prakriti, and this whole world comes about in different combinations and permutations. We have the world, it's quite scientific that way, very close to what the scientists are saying. Only problem I find among the new psychiatrists and psychologists, that they think that the concept of Purusha, which is, they don't use the word of course, concept of, they say identity, one's own identity or ego. The concept of Purusha seems to have been misunderstood in a way. They think that the Purusha is a product of the brain. Basic problem. We are saying that the Purusha is all pervading. It functions to the human brain, which is a very, very complex computer. Therefore, we see consciousness working so well around. So, therefore, we are also saying that when the brain ceases to exist, like in death, the Purusha does not cease to exist. Even though, even Sankhya and Yoga Darshana believe that the word mind or manas, the subtlest form of the food that we have goes to form the mind, which means what? Still it's material. Anything beyond the mind can be called not material, but up to the mind it's still material. So, therefore, I think it will be a great thing for the mind doctors of also other disciplines other than Ayurveda to study some of the Shastras and especially the Sankhya system of thought to understand this concept of Purusha and Prakriti properly. It would be a great help. I am of the opinion that all these disciplines should come together and share. Look, you know that Shushruta conducted even operation surgeries for the brain. No, we don't have it now in Ayurveda. Who does brain surgery? So we can always bring something in from here and share something from there. As far as mind science is concerned, I think Ayurveda has much to contribute. Yoga and Ayurveda, much to contribute to allopathic sciences. So the question of mind, suffering, all this needs to be looked at in greater depth, and we have to get together and do it. We cannot do it otherwise. Yoga, Ayurveda and the present day forms of medicine should sit together and discuss without ego problems and this is not right, that without discussion we cannot come to an understanding. Samvad, not argument. If it is an argument, then there is always vidvisha, fight. So samvad is important because both are important. So I think that is wonderful. However, on this subject I have to tell you that who was Jung's teacher, Carl Jung's teacher, the famous Freud. Now, Jung was a disciple of Freud, but slowly he departed away from it. And this is something of great interest. I have told this to many psychiatrists, psychologists, also who are allopaths, that Jung did a research on the Satchakra Nirupana based on the English translation of Sir John Woodroffe, Sir John Woodroffe. He has written a book called Serpent Power, which is an examination of the Shat Chakra Nirupana. And Jung studied it properly and came out. He gave a series of lectures in the universities in Europe, especially in Berlin, I think, university, where he showed how this is a wonderful thing if the psychiatrist can understand this fact that there are centers of energy in the human psyche which can be tapped for various purposes and which could also have a great influence on the mind. Sarvatra Samabuddhaya comes out of that, knowing how to handle these energies properly. So, such kind of work is very important for us. If we do that, I think it will benefit mankind to a great extent. I can't do it, I am not a qualified, and in yoga there is actually no university that gives us such PhDs. I mean there are, but basically it's a disciple-guru relationship that forms and from there it comes out. Mm-hmm.
So, apart from that, is there any higher understanding of the life that, uh, uh, like you told about the Purusha and the Prakriti? Is there any other higher understanding of life which is existing?
I think when one, through the practice of various yogic techniques and understanding also, both theory and practice, comes to the understanding that every human being is actually in true essence Purusha, in true essence. once he frees himself from the influence of Prakriti, then you come to the understanding that the consciousness that you see around is actually also in us. When I say in us, it's not as a physically in or out, but in the core of our consciousness. It's like this. Consciousness, I'm talking in a practical language, not Sankhya, but very close to Sankhya. I had to learn Sankhya from Maheshwarnath Babaji to some extent before he allowed me to even open the Yoga Darshana. So I had to do a little bit. So what I realized was that consciousness is all pervading. We may not see it, we may not feel it many times, but it is there. Look at the tree. The tree does not have a brain, specific brain. No. But when there is no water, the roots go looking for it. There is an innate intelligence. That's what I am talking about. This is consciousness. Okay. Now, when there is no sun, the branches grow towards the sun. There is no particular brain there which says do it, but it is built in the cells, innate. And even individual cells, from the tree to the human to the amoeba, single cellular organism, there seems to be an innate intelligence which reproduces, which eats food, which does everything, just as we do. Even though we have a developed brain, so we have a capacity to think and do it, but it happens. So, wherever there is this life, there is this intelligence called consciousness. Right. Now, apart from that, we say, okay, what about inanimate objects? If you ask a physicist, he will tell you or she will tell you that even though inanimate objects look as if they are still in inertia, there is vast movement going on inside. There is no movementless thing. Therefore, I am reflecting what the Upanishad says, Ishavasya Upanishad, Ishavasyamidam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat. The very meaning of the word jagat means it is jagatyam, it's always moving. There is nothing that is not moving. The very word jagat comes from jagatyam, from movement. So, wherever there is movement, there is consciousness, and since the movement is generally orderly, it appears to be disorderly sometimes because of opposing order from the other side. Generally it is, so therefore there is an innate something going on there, and that is consciousness in general. When it comes to the human being, that consciousness is expressed in a more complex form through this computer called the brain. So we think that only we have the consciousness, others do not have, because we have an advanced form of consciousness. So this is another thing that one should understand. So therefore, when you understand that Purusha, which is consciousness when free of all vrittis inside us, when it becomes free of vrittis, you cannot anymore call it the mind. Even the mind, even if you read the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Recently I wrote a book called Yoga Also for the Godless. I don't know whether you have seen this. So when the mind has, I believe in God, I have a concept, but I am saying also, I did not say for the godless also. So when the mind is completely quiet, it ceases to be the ordinary mind, then only the Purusha is reflected. And this is not esoteric, it is like for you and me, for everybody. We have to only understand this concept. So there is a practical, what is the practical aspect? To free the mind of distractions. And there is a regular abhyasa for that. Ashtanga Yoga, there are 8 steps how to go about that. And therefore, from childhood, from schools, if children are taught, not forcibly, but when this is put to them and say, look, these are the advantages, at least for physical advantages they will start practicing yoga. Then it is for them to decide if they want to go further up. I think these steps can be taken.
Respected Sri M, at this point, I would like to ask you one question, sir.
Sir.
You know, this book, Yoga and the Godless, for the Godless.
No, yoga
also for the Godless, also for the Godless, yeah.
Yes.
So in that, you know, I listened to a recent talk of yours, and you did mention in that, in the context of chitta vritti nirodha, that you originally thought of chitta vritti samhara. You considered samhara, but you didn't go for samhara because you thought that is not a total, you know, destruction or annihilation of thought, but it is the stoppage of thought. Now, my question to you, sir, is, while there is, of course, another meaning for samhara, which is to collect, to bring together. It is not one meaning is this, and that is the other meaning.
True.
But my question to you, sir, is, in your talk, you are hypothesizing that when I do chitta vritti nirodha, right, and I'm actually in the state of the Purusha, I've aligned with the Purusha, then I'm totally cut off. As you told about many people who have attained the asamprajnata samadhi, they're completely cut off, in which case I can't function in the world. Therefore, I return to a functioning self in the real world. You did mention. Right. My question to you, therefore, and then you say in the chitta vritti nirodha, that point is where I am back in the world, but I am kind of trying to seize the movement of mind. Now, is there a possibility to be, therefore, in the higher self and yet conduct myself simultaneously in the Vyavahara, world of Vyavahara?
Nobody
so
has
it's not
asked.
a dichotomy. It is something.
Nobody has asked me this question, and I'm surprised that you listen so closely to this talk. Anyway, so, sir, it is like this. While this is possible, what you said just now, but it is almost rare. It's not such an easy thing to do. Yeah, but it is possible. I'm not saying the possibility is not there, but the possibility is very, very remote. Like, you know, the Ashtavakra Samhita. Now, the Ashtavakra Gita is such a deep little study that I tell people, don't study it unless you have gone through other disciplines. Because then suddenly you might go, I mean, it's not meant for that actually. It's meant for what you just said. I'll come back to this. When the great sage Ashtavakra visited Janaka, now Janaka's guru for a long time teacher was Yajnavalkya. So he asked him, so are you free now? So Janaka said, yes, because I can in Samadhi. When I go into the state called Samadhi, I am free. So he said, now? No, now I have come out of Samadhi. There is some bondage. But when I go into Samadhi, I am free. Ashtavakra says, then this cannot be Kaivalya. Because if it is Kaivalya, it should be always free. There is no going in, there is no coming out. So then from there he starts the teaching of the Ashtavakra Samhita. So rare cases when people have touched Nirvikalpa Samadhi, they probably can function sitting out there. We are all lesser beings, sir. We need to go and come back and function from where we are. But once you have touched that, you cannot be the same. This also I stressed in my talk. I don't know if you...
Yes, I did. I heard that.
Anybody who goes into a super conscious state or state which is beyond the ordinary mind cannot be the same when they came back. So that reflects in your actions. Definitely it reflects in your action. They are not the same action.
So connected question then, you spoke a few minutes back that you said about how to cope with suffering, and you talked about Sri Krishna advising Arjuna on the battlefield about, you know, the Daridrya, Narayanan, that concept of Padasevanam.
Sarvabhuta hite ratha, yes.
Yeah. And then contributing to lessening others' suffering, and the, you know, Samabhava, the at all times being, you know, the Sthita Prajna Bhava, whatever that you speak about. So to achieve all of that, for a common man, for a man to conduct himself in life that way, would it not be equally, if not more difficult than the Nirvikalpa Samadhi? Or is that the way to conduct oneself in life? Because you did enjoin us, you did encourage. Okay.
I didn't get your question.
Yeah.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, the point that to conduct oneself in that form wherein I'm able to really see God in every human being, in every living being, and to contribute to lessening their suffering, for that to truly happen, unless I have, if it has to be true, it cannot be I cannot put on an act. I have to really feel it from within. So if that happens sustained basis, it has to be Nirvikalpa in one sense. It has.
I have to tell you this, that this is a two-way affair. One, you imitate what people who have reached that have done and move towards there where they have reached. You see, yes. So because suddenly you cannot say, oh, so you need to imitate. You see, if they are doing that, there must be some reason behind it. So you move like that first with a certain surmise that in the end this is how it will be. But when you reach there, then you act that way. Now, why do we act that way? Because I must tell you, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, I am fully convinced due to various reasons that he had attained Nirvikalpa Samadhi. I have no questions on this. When he went on a pilgrimage to Devghar, Baidyanath Dham, Baidyanath is very important, Baidyanath Dham, it's one of the Jyotirlingas. So, that time there was a big famine there, cholera. People were dying right in front of his eyes. He got off from his palki, and Mathur Babu, who had taken him, who was Rani Rasmoni's son-in-law, he told him, look Mathur, you go back and get all the food and everything medical required for these people, right? If you don't do that, I am not coming. I am going to stay here, I am going to die with them. You do this first. Mathur Babu had no other way than to work on this. So he did it. Then only he decided to move from there. So when Swami Vivekananda first came back from all these foreign travels and talked about the concept of Atmano Mokshartha Jagat Hitaya Cha, Atma Moksha for the Atman and Hita for the other people, Hitaya Cha, his own Guru Bhais told him, this is not, this is a new theory, you have borrowed it from the West. We don't have any such theory. Thakur told us to do sadhana and become and attain God. He didn't say any of these things. Then Swamiji picked up his kamandalu and walked out. He said, okay, if you have understood Thakur better than me, you run the affair. I am not interested. I am a sannyasin, basically. So he took his kamandalu and they went and told him, please, Dada, come back. We were just discussing the matter. We are not. So he told them this story, which I told you just now. So this is what Thakur did. And if you think I understand him less, then you do the thing. I am not interested. So this is probably the answer to what you said, at least put for thought, that while we need to do what they did and try to move towards them, and our actions will certainly reflect our spiritual state. Even if it has not reached Nirvikalpa Samadhi, eventually when you reach there, then you might probably able to be like Ramana Maharshi. Ramana Maharshi. You cannot see a single picture where Ramana Maharshi's eyes are closed. There was no need. Inside and outside is the same. Till you reach there, one also need to imitate and practice what such people did so that we eventually go there. I hope.
Just one a different request. I'm not sure if would like to understand your conception and understanding of the term Pibare Ramarasam. How do you, if I say Pibare Ramarasam, what does it evoke in you?
I don't know whether this is part of this subject, Doctor, but I don't mind.
I think we have.
Okay.
If you don't mind, it is something which is very dear to our hearts, and so therefore we would request you.
See, this was a great song composed by you know who. Who?
The Sadhashiva Brahmendra.
Sadhashiva Brahmendra was the person who actually sang and wrote the lyrics of this wonderful song. Now he was a Vedantin of the highest order. I think he was a Paramahamsa, according to me. In fact, so much so that he didn't even wear clothes. He was a naked soul. And so Pibare Ramarasa, the human mind is such that it cannot remain without enjoying something. If you cut it off from enjoyment, it will go to lower enjoyment. If you cut off higher enjoyment, it will seek lower enjoyment, it will seek higher enjoyment. Now rasa is essence. Now here Rama, the name Rama Rasa need not necessarily be the form of Rama, but the Supreme Brahman himself is addressed as Rama by Sadhashiva Brahmendra. So when you say Pibare Rama Rasa, it means drink the rasa of the name which takes you into the highest samadhi. So in that samadhi you enjoy the essence of being. So he says it is also the song that comes from a Shuddha Paramahamsa's place. It's the song that flows all the time in a place where Paramahamsas dwell. Right? So which means what? That it is this great enjoyment of the essence of the Supreme Being who he addresses as Rama. Also his original name was Ramakrishna.
Right.
So Pibore Ramarasa also could mean sing, enjoy, drink the rasa sung by Rama, also possible.
Okay. Sri M, on behalf of everybody at AyurVaid, I would like to extend our gratitude to you for very inspiring words, which I think not only for us, but for all the patients, the larger community at large. Today, some of the views that you've expressed will be resonating in many people's minds for a long time.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you.
हाँ सर